So, there is something known as the flow net in the earthen dam. So, you must have realized that having proven that the top flow line or the phreatic line is a parabola, and hence the equipotential lines are also going to be a parabola. So, the way we draw this is, if I consider that this is the dam, and if I have the top phreatic line like this, the next phreatic line like this and like this, the equipotential lines to this would be perpendicular to the flow lines So, this is how the flow net gets developed. So, this is the psi function and this is the phi function. What you are observing here is that this is going to be a set of confocal parabolae, alright. Now, suppose I consider this point. Now, this is what is going to be the bottom flow line, and this, if this is connected to the atmosphere, this is going to be the equipotential line. So, at point A I have the singularity, that means on the left hand side I have the flow line, on right hand side I have the equipotential line, and hence point A becomes singular. Now, this type of a situation can be created by putting a filter layer. Now, the moment you put a filter layer, this becomes an equipotential, the atmospheric pressure prevails over here, and hence the total head is going to be 0 at this point. The way we have plotted the flow lines and we have assumed this to be the bottommost flow line, all the equipotential lines, when you plot them in totality, would extend up to this regime, and this line would become the bottommost equipotential line. Clear? So, if at point A, if I enlarge things, this is how it will look like. So, I have the flow lines coming and meeting over here, and the equipotential lines starting from here this is what the representation of the confocal parabolae would be. You can also assume that this is impervious surface and this is the pervious. I will say this is the pervious domain, this is the impervious domain. Now, we will take the situation where the two problems which I wanted to discuss related to the confined flow. I hope you must have realized it is very difficult to draw the flow nets in case of the embankment by hand. One has to be a very good artist, otherwise it is extremely difficult. This is a very complicated set of the flow nets. So, suppose there is a situation like you have an embankment, there is a filter layer. What I have done is a close look at this figure will show that I have shifted the point A inside the body of the dam, and that answers the question which he is asking, that how would you control the seepage lines so that they do not cut the downstream slope. So, truly speaking, this is the engineering solution which you are providing by shifting the entire layer of the drainage media inside the body of the dam. So, what is going to happen? The moment I shift this filter layer somewhere here, point A becomes the focus of, point A is the focus of the parabole. The moment it goes over here, all the flow lines will get diverted towards the filter. This is the engineering solution which is given to make dams stable against seepage, alright. And at the time of construction itself this can be done. So, imagine if you want to construct a dam, how would you do it? You will first lay in this portion certain layer of granular material. You will start laying the soil on this side and compacting it. So, this is the soil. Second layer of soil, second layer of gravel or sands, and then you can give it a shape of the final embankment like this. So, this becomes my drainage layer and point A gets shifted inside. Now, the moment I have done this type of a manipulation, the top flow lines will always come and cut at the vertex. So, this is the vertex point E. Fine. Now, if you use the concepts of geometry, it so happens that AE is always the mid of, suppose if I take F point, where AE is equal to EF, and if I draw a line which is perpendicular to the surface, what this line would be? This will be the directrix. Clear? And you know the property of the directrix. So, suppose if I define this as Z naught or whatever, let us say if I define this thing as Z naught, and if I consider a point here at y and x. So, the moment I have fixed the directrix, I know the focus, I know the vertex E, and I am assuming that AE is equal to EF, total length of the filter is known. Y square plus x square under root will be equal to x plus Z naught. Is this okay? This is the property of the directrix. Any point sitting on the parabola would be having, has to satisfy this condition. Is this okay? So, what I have done now, I know this point, I know the starting point as 0.3 times L, okay, where this is L This is the point of submergence. For solving the parabola, how many points we require? 3. One is known, second one is fixed, third one I can obtain by using this geometry. So, if I know the z naught value, I can consider a point over here. This is the equation which I get. Fine. This discussion is mostly based on this construction. So, if I know the kx and kz value, I think this is the problem which we have already discussed in the class. Homogeneous soil mass, anisotropic in the sense because hydraulic conductivities are different in x and z direction. What you will have to do is you will have to go for equivalent hydraulic conductivity, which is root of kx kz. What is causing flow? H. H is known as 18 meters. So, this 18 meter is going to cause the flow. After the flow net is constructed, I can count the NF and ND, and this is 3.8 and 18. This function is transformation of x into xt direction. So, root of kz by kx would be 0.6 times x. All the dimensions in the x direction will get reduced, and hence you are seeing that the embankment has become steep. GCT is nothing but 0.3 times HCT. If height is 18, this is 45. 45 into 0.6 would be 27. Apply the correction again 0.3. So, this becomes 0.3 times 27. If the flow net is done, I can draw a line passing through A in the vertical direction. Wherever this cuts the top flow line, this becomes my A prime. A prime distance I can measure on the filter bed. I can draw a line passing through this. This will become directrix. Okay. Once you have done this construction, rest of the things are simple. So, if I know the NF and ND, if I multiply it by the H value, I can find out the discharge taking place through this section. What he was asking, I have tried to answer over here. At a given point P, if I want to know what is the total powder pressure, the thumb rule is if the two equipotential lines are known, you interpolate in between, draw the equipotential which is passing through the point P, draw a horizontal layer. If I put a piezometer here, it will go and cut the top surface at this point where the equipotential is cutting the top phreatic line. Point of intersection of the top phreatic line and this equipotential is going to give you the total head at this point. So, once you have got the value of u, you can compute whatever has been asked. Is this okay? I will repeat it again. After drawing the flow net, if I want to find out powder pressure at any given point, what I have to do is I have to interpolate the equipotential line passing through that point, find out where this equipotential cuts the top phreatic line. The vertical distance between this point and the horizontal plane which is passing through point P is nothing but the powder pressure. This is a good example of unconfined flow under homogeneous conditions, anisotropic conditions, and you can solve the problems. Practice it by following some book. The last thing which I want to discuss regarding the unconfined flow is most of the time we come across the situations where we have different zones in the embankments. So, suppose I want to reduce the seepage which is taking place through the body of the dam. So, there are two ways. One I did is by maximizing the H value and getting the value of Q, which is the inverse process. Another better way would be if I design, let us say, a core of a impervious material in between. So, suppose this is the upstream water level, and if I want to check the seepage taking place through this, what I have to do is I have to put a impervious core. Now, this becomes the situation which you have already come across in physics when you are dealing with the Snell's law in case of light, you know. If I consider this permeability as K1, this permeability as K2, and if you realize how the flow lines are going to travel through them, what is going to happen? This flow line comes, hits the second layer of a different permeability. The same thing is valid when we go from K2 to K3. So, the moment this comes out of the system, depending upon K3, there is going to be a deviation in the top flow line. So, this becomes a case of the interface. Another type of interface might occur if I consider a dam where I have provided a tow filter here. Okay. In this case, K2 is tending to 0 because I wanted to make system impervious. So, I have used clay to make a core of the dam through which nothing should permeate, very small value of K2. But here I am sure you will realizing that K2 is tending to infinity because this is made up of rock cores, gravels, sands. There is a specific purpose. Now, this is a filter. Clear? What is going to happen? The top flow line will come, hit across this, and then it enters into K2. Whether it will enter into K2 or not is a big question. So, when the flow is taking place across the discontinuities or the boundaries, what you have to do is you have to solve this problem by assuming a simple model, and let this model be like this, that this is the interface where the two materials are located. This is let us say A material, this is B material. If I draw a channel of flow, clear. So, this is the material A, permeability is Ka, this is material B, permeability is Kb. Now, the question is you have to find out what is going to happen to these flow lines when the interface is there. So, draw the perpendicular to these interfaces, and then clear. If I ask you to draw the flow net, it can be done. This angle is alpha A, angle of incidence of the flow line in the media A. This angle is alpha B, the angle of deviation with respect to perpendicular drawn on the interface. I will show interface as a thick line. I can draw the flow nets. This is the first equipotential line, second equipotential line, third equipotential line. I can assume this to be, let us say, x y a, L a. So, y a is the width of the channel, L a is the length of the channel. Same thing can be done over here also. So, this is YB and LB. Can you draw a relationship between alpha A, alpha beta? So, derive a relationship between this XA, YA, LA, YB, LB, and what is causing the flow to take place, delta H. So, I can have a situation where delta HA and delta HB are provided. The continuity says that discharge will remain same, fine. So, if discharge remains same, QA will be equal to QB, that means this will be KA multiplied by delta HA upon LA into YA into 1, and this will be equal to KB delta HB upon LB YB into 1, fine, continuity equation. Try to solve this expression and hope you will realize that what you will be getting is tan alpha A upon tan alpha B equal to Ka upon Kb. Of course, you have to assume some relationship between Ya and Yb, La and Lb. So, if I assume both sides the squares, Ya La cancels out, Yb Lb cancels out, this is one of the solutions. These are perfect squares, these are perfect squares, clear. So, I have simplified the whole thing and I am getting this expression. Now, what is the interpretation of this expression? That is very important. So, the whole story started from the interface problems like this. This K1 is a finite value. The value of hydraulic conductivity for the filter layer is tending to infinity, clear. So, what is the relationship between alpha 1 and alpha 2? Alpha 2 is going to be 0. Why? What is the meaning of this? The seepage line will never enter in a media which is highly permeable, and hence what is going to happen? The flow is going to take place parallel to the plane of the filter. It bypasses the media. Now, this concept is used for designing most of the filters in industry as well as in various civil engineering projects. So, coming back to this situation, what we have been talking about, I think I have given you the basics and you can extend them to this situation. K1, K2 permeability contrast, we have zone 1, zone 2. What I have done is zone 2 you have to go for equivalent permeability transformation. Flow channels will remain same 1, 2, 3.6, 1, 2, 3.6, the same thing is going to enter into this also. Number of drops will not get affected because of the hydraulic conductivity. I hope you agree with this, because number of drops have nothing to do with the permeability of the material, they follow the geometry. So, here you have the equipotential of 100% and here you have equipotential of 0% because this is a filter layer. So, 16 head value is getting dissipated from this point to this point. How many head drops? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, clear. So, I have got NF by ND. NF by ND is a constant term we discussed in the previous lecture, and if I multiply it by the AA prime value, you remember A prime value. This is nothing but the distance of the focus from the directrix. So, this can be obtained very easily. So, though these problems look very complicated, they are very easy to solve. The moment you have got NF upon ND, the moment you know the focus point, which is intentionally done by you, clear? You know the top flow line, get the value of A prime, directrix is known, do a little bit of computation by using that expression, and hence the discharge across the plane can be obtained very easily. So, NF upon ND multiplied by A prime is the discharge through the body of the dam. Clear? So, in this case, it is a beautiful example of how two zones have been clubbed together to do the seepage analysis. So, I am using the concepts of isotropic systems, homogeneous individually, but I have two zones which are heterogeneous in nature, and I am showing here the concept what we have used over here, that there are two ways of solving this. Either I should be having a relationship between delta HA and delta HB. Suppose this is x, not x, suppose some alpha value, alright. So, what I am doing is I am defining the relationship between the head drop across first layer and head drop across second layer and how they are related. I will get one solution, clear. The second way of doing this would be the geometry of the system. So, I may say that YA upon LA is equal to YB upon LB multiplied by some beta. This is my choice because this is a geometry. I can control the geometry of the flow, or I can assume the distribution of the heads across this point. Ideal situation would be if you keep the head constant between this and this, there is no problem. That is what actually we have done in this case. In the previous lecture, I had stopped after discussing the case of the sheet piles, and I had emphasized on the concepts of determining the discharge through the opening below the sheet pile and the impervious strata. And this is where I had talked about how to compute the number of drops and number of flows which you can utilize to obtain the discharge. There is another class of problem which normally is discussed in the realm of seepage analysis, and that is what is depicted over here. So, there is a sheet pile which is retaining a certain height of water 4.5 meter, and there is a tail water or the downstream water, and the datum has been considered over here with 0.5, and I am interested in finding out what is the pore pressure at a given point in the porous media. So, once you have obtained the flow net, it should not be difficult for you to compute the pore pressure at a given point, because remember the entire analysis we have done until now is by assuming the delta H, which is the total head, and that causes a seepage regime to get developed into the porous media. So, delta H is H1 minus H2, that is 4, and this head is getting distributed in the porous media. So, at this point P, if I know the equipotential, I know the total head. If the datum is known, I know the position head of point P, which will be equal to minus Zp, and if I insert a piezometric tube over here, the total height of the water column in this tube would be this much, that is Hp plus minus Zp, alright. So, this is how we can compute the pore pressure at a given point. Rest remains same, and you can compute the discharge which is taking place through this orifice or the open space. I will move on to another interesting problem. There is a sheet pile, and I would like to find out what is the pressure which is getting exerted on the sheet pile along its depth. So, this pressure is because of the seepage. In the second course, when we are dealing with the earth pressure theory, we will find out the earth pressure which is coming on the sheet pile, and then the combination of the two will give you the total pressure which is acting on the system. The concepts remain same. This is a sheet pile, this is the downstream ground surface, this is the upstream ground surface, there is a water table here in the backfill of the sheet pile. At steady state condition, the flow regime develops in the porous media, and the height which is attained by the downstream water table is 4.0 above the ground surface. If the flow net is known, you can work out the number of drops at point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 along the sheet pile. I can work out the pore pressure, and just now I discussed how to obtain the pore pressure at a given point. Remember, each equipotential line defines the total head. So, if you know the elevation head of the point, total head minus elevation head will give you the pore pressure. There is a simple example which I thought I will discuss over here. These problems I have taken from the Craig's book. So, my suggestion is please follow either Craig book or any other book, whatever you might be having access of. There is another interesting problem, and this is something to do with what you were asking in the last lecture. There is a body of the dam or a weir. In hydraulics course you must have studied the design of weirs. So, this is the cross section of the dam which is retaining water with a water head of 5 meter, and downstream side you have a water tail of 1 meter. As the thumb rule is that tail water level is considered as datum. Draw the flow net number 1, find out the NF and D. So, I think now you can realize that drop number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So, I have drawn ND as 15. The flow lines would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some fraction of the squares which I am considering as 0.7. So, number of flow lines I have taken as 4.7. You can compute Q value as usual, and this is the discharge which is taking place through the bottom end of the sheet pile, you may say, from the opening. I can find out this discharge across any element. So, suppose if this is the element across which I want to find out the discharge, what I should be knowing is what is the head difference across any element, and then NF upon ND I will be using, and then I can compute the Q value. What I want to highlight over here is these type of analyses are done to find out the uplift due to the seepage. If you remember, when we were talking about the seepage force computation, I had drawn a figure where I had created a earthen dam, and then at the base of the earthen dam I had shown you that this is the seepage pressure which is acting. Suppose you have to find out the pore water pressure at point 1, 2, 3 and so on. Now, this is the pore water pressure which is acting at the base of the earthen dam or any system which is sitting on the soil media. Point 1, the elevation head is 0.8, alright, datum is at 1. So, the elevation head at point 1 is minus 1.8. If the equipotential line which is passing through point 1 is known, I know the total head at this point, I can compute the pore water pressure H minus elevation head. It might so happen, suppose if I want to find out the pore water pressure between 3 and 4, let us say some point 3 prime, what I will have to do? I will have to refine my flow net in such a manner that one of the equipotentials passes through 3 prime. So, in that case the whole flow net will get changed. This is what somebody was discussing yesterday, that, and I was talking about the precision of the flow nets. Alright. So, please practice these situations, follow some book, and I think there should not be any problem. Once you know the pore water pressures, you can obtain the distribution of the pore water pressure which is acting at the base of the system, and then I can impose this pressure for finding out the stability of the dam. Now, with this I finish my discussion on confined flows. As I said, in most of the cases here, whatever we have discussed until now the porous media is confined by the boundary conditions. Alright. Now, I am going to take the situations where unconfined flow takes place. So, we have applied seepage theory to two cases. The one is the confined flow, mostly in case of the sheet piles, and earthen embank, or let us say a dam or a weir. In today's class, I will be discussing about the unconfined flow, which is a characteristic of earthen dams. And particularly homogeneous cross sections. And of course, to simplify the things, I am assuming this to be isotropic. That means Kx is equal to Kz equal to Ky. By definition, the unconfined flow is occurring in a situation like this, that if I consider an earthen dam, so this is an earthen dam, it is a cross section, in fact it is an embankment, we can call this as an embankment also. This is a third dimension which is going up to the infinity into the plane perpendicular to the blackboard. Normally we define the slopes as 1:m and 1:n, where 1 is vertical and n is horizontal. We might assume this to be impervious, it's a rock, and then suppose if I am retaining water over here of height h, I want to establish the domain of seepage which is occurring through the body of the earthen dam. Now, based on what we discussed in the previous lecture, I hope you can realize that this is an equipotential. What about this surface? Line 1, 2, sorry, this is also an equipotential, agreed. So, these are equipotential lines or equipotentials we will say, forget about lines and all, these are equipotentials. Can you tell me where the flow line would be? Similarly, on the downstream side, if I say that this is the height of water which is being retained, so this is the upstream side, this is the downstream side. I hope you can easily recognize the equipotential lines or the equipotentials, this is also in equipotential, alright. Now, if you look at the bottom layer, what happens? This happens to be the flow line. Okay. Did you follow this? Intentionally, what I am not trying to show here, the top flow line, because the top flow line is going to be something like this, okay, and we do not know what is its shape, what is location as a function of time itself. Now this problem is becoming very complicated. So what we will have to do is we will have to take a steady state so that we come out of the time facts. So suppose the saturation takes place, the top flow line sets in. Now this is what the top flow line would be, okay. So this is the top flow line, we call this as the phreatic line also, where the pressures are atmospheric. I hope you can realize the moment H changes, what is going to happen? This line will drop down or go up, and that is the reason we call this thing as unconfined, because the porous media through which the discharge is going to take place happens to be the earthen dam. The top flow line is not fixed and it is a function of so many parameters. A bit of variation in H is going to change its location. The flow is confined between these equipotential lines and the flow line. The top flow line is not known. Now what I am intentionally trying to show over here is, if you allow this type of a seepage pattern to occur, it goes and hits somewhere over here, and this is what we were discussing in the last lecture. Meaning thereby, if the line of seepage or the seepage flow hits the earthen dam at the downstream side, from this point onwards the erosion will occur. What happens between, let us say, if I define this as 3 and 4. Now 3 and 4 becomes a seepage line. This is also a sort of a flow line. No, sorry, not flow line, this is a discharge line. Better you call this as a seepage line only. Better let it be the seepage line, alright. Now we are interested in finding out what is the location of point 3, number 1, what is the velocity of the seepage which is taking place at this, what is the shape of the top flow line, alright, and what its location. A comprehensive picture of this situation would be if I consider the foundation soil also. So I will remove this impervious layer from here and I will shift the impervious layer somewhere over here. Now what has happened? This portion we have already analyzed, clear? So this is a sort of a confined flow. In totality or in real life, what happens is we have a composite porous media domain through which the seepage is going to take place. So some part of the seepage is going to take place through the foundations, rest of the seepage is going to take place through the body of the dam. So what I will do today is, I am not much eager to analyze the foundation system. I will go back to the unconfined flow problem through the body of the dam. Is this part okay? Any questions? Now suppose if I consider the cross section of the dam as alright, there is a water column over here, there is a tail water here, and this is the phreatic line which is developing over here. Now, if I start doing the analysis, I will just give you few steps I might like to skip, because otherwise it becomes too much time consuming. If I consider this as 1:m and 1:n, if I draw this line further and if I treat this as h minus h, if I shift the origin at this point, if I consider this as B, this will be the top of the embankment, or the dam, and let us say this is B1. So, this thing is going to be equal to n times h minus h. See, this is h and this is h. So, this becomes h minus h, 1:n. So, this becomes n h minus h. I think the first analysis we should be doing is with the, I will have to change the phreatic line. Yeah, you are right. So, I was not very careful when I drew this. Thank you. So, in this case we are eliminating, or we are putting the point 3. Point 3 is known as the outcrop point. So, in this case outcrop point 3 happens to be meeting with the tailwater. Is this okay now? Now, in most of these analysis what we do is we consider an element, because the first task in hand is find out the shape and location of the top flow line. That means I have to establish what is the shape of this curve. So, if I assume at a certain x distance there is an element, alright, of thickness dx, and at this point the height of this system is, let us say, y. I hope you can realize the dy by dx is going to be the velocity vector, because this happens to the phreatic line. So, let me explain to you the concept of the phreatic line first. If I keep a piezometric tube at this point, alright, and if I know by somehow the flow net of the system, if I know the total head at this point, the total head is going to be equal to the equipotential line which is going through this point and cutting the top phreatic line. So, just consider this for the time being. When we will draw the flow net, we will discuss this in details, alright. That means if I draw an equipotential line from passing through the point H, and this is the top flow line where the phreatic line is, the point of intersection, distance between the point of intersection of these two and this element is going to be the pore water pressure at point H. I will explain it again later, alright. Now, if you solve this expression, I will write quickly the steps. Yes, which one? In this one here, n h minus, oh sorry, yes, you are right. Is this correct? this much. Now what you can do is, if you consider this element over here, I can write the q equal to k into I into A, and this will be equal to k into dy by dx into area of cross section will be y into 1. This is the slope of the phreatic line, and if I integrate, let us say, this function, I will be getting dx equal to k by q into dy y. So 0 to x, and this is 0 to y. When I am writing dy by dx, please be careful with the sign, this will be minus. If you solve this expression, you will be getting q into x equal to minus k y square upon 2 plus c. Substitute the boundary conditions, x equal to 0, y is equal to h, and in second case I can substitute this value over here and I get c is equal to k into h square by 2, and hence q will be equal to k h square minus y square upon 2x. I hope you can realize that this is the equation of the parabola, where I can write y square equal to h square minus 2 times qx upon k. This is the equation of the parabola. So what we have proven is that the top flow line happens to be a parabolic curve. This is okay. The another equation will come when you substitute x equal to, let us say, b plus n times h minus h, and at this point y is equal to h. I hope you can understand the basic objective is to obtain the value of h. H is the principal unknown. Why? Because I would like to find out what is the maximum discharge taking place through which the h becomes maximum. So I have to design the system in such a manner that the maximum discharge should not occur. So I should be taking the value of h when it becomes maximum. So can I, if I want to maximize h, what I will have to do is I will have to write this expression in this form: a small q. A small q is not constant, a small q is a function of this. What do you mean? See, that is what we have proven. Y square is a function of x, is a parabola. Your h is given constant, is it not? Q will remain constant for a configuration of h and small h. K is constant, and hence this is a parabolic function. Alright. So what I can do is I can write this expression as q equal to k h square minus h square over 2 times b plus n h minus h. This is the function which I get. Is this part clear? So, for a given h and small h, this is the flow regime which is getting developed. Now, I want to optimize this function. So, obtain h maximum. So, if you differentiate this function and put it equals to 0, what you will be obtaining is, you will be obtaining h which is maximum equal to h plus b by n minus under root h plus b by n square minus h square, this expression. In short, what we have done is, we are finding out the nature of the top flow line for the condition when capital H is causing the flow to occur in the homogeneous dam section under unconfined flow condition. Tail height is h and we want to see what is the maximum height of the tail water which is going to come for this system. B1, B in fact is a function of B1 comma h, because design height has to be fixed. Now, this is what is known as a freeboard. You must have been reading in newspapers why freeboard is so important and why the cities are getting drowned these days. There are so many cases including Maharashtra and so on, is it not? M, N. So, I can design the top width keeping in view the h, the two types of slopes, how much water is to be retained, what is the freeboard. So, I will include in this the freeboard, let us say as Z. So, this becomes a typical cross section of the earthen dam, fairly simple. The only point of interest you should remember is, we are taking a hypothetical plane across which we are finding out the discharge, and just to make things clear, the slope of this line is nothing but dy by dx. So, which I am assuming to be equal to I, rest is all simple mathematics. Yeah, so you check it for the global minima also by double differentiating it and get a solution, that you can do. Check whether this is going to be a global minima or not. That is right. So, Q is going to be maximum for the H maximum, that is right, correct. So, the maximum discharge is going to get accumulated over here and hence the H is also going to be the maximum possible for this situation. So, both the things are interlinked. See, another point here is the outcrop point. So, if I consider a typical case downstream where the top flow line comes and cuts the embankment, and if this is the alpha value, this is the velocity of the water. At this point M, if I consider this as y and this as x, point O is the outcrop point, this is inclined at an angle of, let us say, delta, and with respect to horizontal, this is beta. So, if I say alpha equal to delta plus beta, if I assume the component of V in this direction, let us say this is a t direction, as V into cos of delta, I can show that at this point the velocity is going to be equal to dy by dx, and this will be equal to minus k into sin beta. Now, what we will do is, having done this, I will substitute the value of this V which I have obtained from here. So, this becomes V sin of beta into cos of delta. I can also obtain a term here Vt as minus k into dy by dt, and this will be equal to minus k into sin alpha. So, if I go for the equality of the two, k into sin alpha equal to sin beta k into cos of delta, where I can write sin alpha minus beta equal to cos delta, beta will be equal to alpha minus delta. So, I can say that this function, now I have done a, sorry. So, if I substitute this over here, I can show that sin alpha equal to sin beta cos delta, and if I substitute the terms, I will be getting sin of alpha minus delta equal to sin of alpha. What this indicates is that delta tends to 0, number 1. If delta tends to 0, that means the discharge velocity at the free surface is going to be equal to whatever the V component is. So, this is always parallel to the downstream slope. This solution is valid when we say alpha is less than equal to 90 degree. So, what we have done is we have talked about the velocity at the outcrop point. We do not know what is the location of this point still. So, location of the point O, or let me put it as S, is not known yet. So, we will try to find it out. Now, there are different methods of finding out the location of the outcrop point. So, this is the point S. One of the simplest method is you adopt the graphical method. Please follow the steps which I am going to talk about. If this is the downstream side of the slope, I have taken this as alpha. What we are interested in finding out is the location of this point, which is S, and this is the height. This is the height of the water column, let us say H or whatever. The first step is extend this in the vertical direction and let it cut the downstream slope . So, extend this line vertically up. Now, wherever this cuts, suppose if I say this is A, this point is B, on AB draw a semicircle. Okay. So, the first step is this, number 2 step is this, draw a tangent to the phreatic line and let it cut the downstream slope. Let us say this point is C. So, this is the step number 3. Take AC as the radius and keeping A as the center, draw an arc . So, A is the center and OC, AC is the radius. Get the point number D. So, this is the step number 3, this is step number 4, get point number D is 5. Keeping center as B and take BD as the radius and draw another arc, let it cut over here. So, this becomes your point number E. So, it so happens that this is the point S, the way I have drawn has to be corrected, alright. So, this is the point S which matches with E, and normally we define this distance as A. So, having done point number 5, this becomes step number 6 and obtain 7, A is 8. Is this okay? I will repeat it. Basically, we wanted to find out the location of the outcrop point. So, take the downstream side of the dam, extend the height of the water column, let it cut the dam surface downstream, get the point B, take A as the center, this as the radius, sorry, this whole thing as the diameter, and then you complete the semicircle. Extend the tangent drawn to the top phreatic line wherever this cuts the inclined surface, point C. take A as the center, AC as the radius, get point D, B as the center, DB as the radius, get point E. AE corresponds to A, and A is the location of the outcrop point. So, until now we have done three things. We have defined the shape of the top flow line, we have defined the location of the point S, and we have also proven that the velocity vector at point S, outcrop point, is going to be parallel to the face of the slope. It is seepage or simple discharge, alright, clear. So, and this surface is not going to be an equipotential, which I showed you in the earlier case. So, it is a freely discharging surface. Is this point okay? Now, the same thing we will prove. I drew these, yeah, because that was one of the situations. Yeah, so basically in that case what I did is I have located intentionally the point S meeting with H. I hope you can understand this is one of the case specific cases. What is the reason for doing this? I will come and explain to you. If this point S is lying somewhere over here, this is going to be more damaging to the body of the dam. You understand? Because the seepage line is coming and hitting it over here. So, the erosion will start here. So, the better way would be, let this point remain submerged into the water table, clear. This is one of the ways, and I can create a reservoir here where I can allow people to do some amusement or whatever. Which one? Yeah, so I am sure you must have realized what we are trying to do is, we are trying to relate H and H, alright. Is this okay? So, I can always create a situation where the top phreatic line comes and meets this point. I can say that S corresponds to, or A value tends to 0, that also I can do. So, this is one of the specific situations which we talked about, just to derive the parabolic equation. Otherwise, what is going to happen? Please realize this. Very conveniently, what I did is, by assuming this point over here, I have imposed this condition of H at this point. At this point, unfortunately, you do not have H valid. Are you getting this point? Because this happens to be a discharge point, this is not a seepage point. That is what we have proven. So, in order to get a mathematical solution, we have forced this point to be lying with the top tail water, so that we can obtain a solution.
So,
yes.
How did we get the expression from sin alpha equal to sin beta cos delta to?
Which one? This one?
Yeah. No, from second one to third one.
This one?
Yeah, from this one to third one.
Okay, what I have done here is, there are two ways of getting the velocity. One is I can take the component of the velocity in the Vt, V cos delta, whatever. Second thing is, if I consider this point very close to the surface, I can use this relationship, dy by dx is I multiplied by k, which is equal to velocity, and hence this velocity is going to be same as this velocity, that is it, continuity. If this point is very close to this, and hence I am computing, I am equating the two velocities, one is this and one is this. So, then this is the solution which I get, and these are the boundary conditions. Yeah, so that means this type of mathematical solution is valid only when your delta values are extremely small, and then what we are showing is that the velocity cannot be just cutting the slope like this. At this point, everything becomes freely draining, discharge, that is it, and it follows this slope. It's okay. Otherwise, you can't balance the boundary conditions, because as I said, then you have to go for finite element modeling to show what is the discharge at this point. So, this again point becomes the discontinuity. Porous media ends at this point for all practical purposes. That is what he is also asking, clear. So, in this case, when we were trying to find out the profile of the top surface, we have put this below the meeting with the tailwater to get a solution. The slope of this phreatic line is nothing but the hydraulic gradient. Remember Dupit's equation? So del H upon del X is I.
But so it should be tan beta and beta is not very small because alpha is generally large.
The best way to define the velocity vector at this point would be the k multiplied by the I value. I is nothing but your gradient of this line.
Yeah.
That's it.
But we make the approximation that tan alpha is sin alpha when alpha is very small.
No, in fact I have not done that. So what I have done here is dy by dx I am taking as sin beta y from where it is coming. Look at this function, clear? So truly speaking, this is the horizontal surface and I am defining the velocity vector with respect to b. So truly speaking, dy by dx is a component of tan. So that tan I am considering as sin beta. Yeah, that is approximation. Now what we will do is this location of the point S we will obtain mathematically, not mathematically, analytically.
Sir,
Yes.
then can we have the two approximations simultaneously, like beta also tending to 0 and delta also tending to 0?
Delta tending to 0 we are obtaining,
Sir, we are assuming
because see if you see this expression is valid when delta tends to 0, clear. So as long as the derivation was concerned we have not assumed anything, but to force a solution over here we are forcing the solution that the seepage has to take place parallel to the slope.
but we reach the following that thing by assuming that delta is tending to 0.
No, that we have not assumed here, because if you see this is the velocity vector which is inclined at an angle of delta. So as long as this analysis is concerned at this point I am not bothered about anything. So suppose if I consider an element over here at y, and suppose if I say this is dy by dx, so this is nothing but the same thing what I have analyzed over here. So there are two ways of defining the velocity at this point. One is the velocity and its component over here. Second one is this velocity is equal to dy by dx at this point. So these are approximations, as he rightly said, your sin beta should have been tan of beta, which is what we are assuming as sin of beta.
So, but like we get that expression from the previous expression, like we substituted sin beta equal to sin alpha minus delta.
That's right.
And
So this is the Vt value, if you realize this is nothing but Vt, because this is my V cos of delta term and I am substituting for V from this equation, clear. So this is what another form of computing velocity would be if I just differentiate the phreatic line multiplied by k.
can be same like sin alpha minus delta should be my sin alpha by cos delta.
Say it again.
Sin alpha minus delta should be sin alpha by cos delta.
This one
No, next one.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you expand this. So what is going to happen? This will be sin alpha minus sin beta is equal to cos delta. So you do the entire procedure, sin alpha minus sin a minus sin b. That cannot be done. So sin a minus b has that series sin a minus sin a into cos b minus cos a sin b. So then you analyze this function and then try to get this. See this expression and this expression I am equating, and then I am coming out with the solution like this.
Alpha minus delta we are getting from the beta. No?
Yes, because I have substituted that value, beta plus delta equal to alpha. Yeah, get rid of beta. So this is what will be alpha minus delta. Yeah, so basically this is going to be sin alpha minus delta into cos delta. So if your deltas are tending to 0, cos of, yeah, because we want to show that you are right. So we want to show that this is going to be a discharge. So already we are inbuilt that delta is tending to 0 and hence cos terms are vanishing out. So you pointed correct. Actually I have, yeah, so he has pointed out correct. So this should be multiplied by cos of delta. Is okay now? Now again this becomes a difficult equation to solve. So, what you will be doing? One of the solutions would be this, that is it. Yeah, so please make this correction, this should be, I skipped this term. There are two ways of computing the velocities. The simple logic is, if I want to find out the gradient along the phreatic line, what is going to happen? The drop, I will introduce this concept just now, dy is nothing but delta h, clear, and delta h upon delta x is nothing but I value. So, this is what I am assuming here, del y upon del x is nothing but the hydraulic gradient term, and that is what I have used over here. So, I have done that, Vt equal to minus k into this thing multiplied by below equation. Yeah, so I have taken this negative sign, this gets cancelled out. Basically, why we are taking negative sign is because as your x increases, the hydraulic gradient is decreasing. Just to compensate that effect, I am using this negative term. Now, what is happening here? This is the distance in which the velocity vector is. So, head drop has to be along this, correct? That is the reason I have taken this. T is some dimension along this plane, T is the vector or the direction along which I am taking the component of V, because my intention is to show that. So, you are right, actually what we are doing is we are assuming things in such a manner that we are forcing a solution to come accordingly. That means, we are taking the direction in which the flow should occur by assuming that delta tends to 0 and hence the velocity component is parallel to this, and we are showing this to be discharge, fine. So, let us do now the analytical solution to obtain the outcrop point. In this expression, suppose if I, in this figure, if I write that q equal to k into I into A, and this will be equal to, let us say, k del y by del x into area y into 1. Solve this expression in such a manner that if this y is equal to h, capital H, and say this distance is d, and this outcrop distance is A, this y will become A sin alpha. Can I show, starting from this function, if I come to, let us say, k upon 2q h square minus y square, substitute the values, x equal to d minus A cos alpha, and at this point y is equal to A sin alpha. Is this okay? So, this much is A cos alpha. So, this distance would be d minus A cos alpha. If you solve this expression, you will be getting q by k equal to h square minus A square cos square alpha sin square alpha upon 2 d minus A cos alpha. This is the equation number 1. Another equation I can obtain by equating q to be equal to k into Can you tell me what will be the another equation? Suppose if I use this function, A sin alpha is the area of cross section through which the flow is taking place. So, y term becomes A sin alpha into 1. What will be the hydraulic gradient here? If I assume this as dy by dx, is this okay? So, this I can write this as tan alpha into A sin alpha. In other words, Q by K will be equal to A tan alpha into sin alpha. So, I am defining the discharge in two ways. If I equate these two, I will be getting an expression the final expression would be A is equal to d by cos alpha minus under root d square by cos square alpha minus h square by sin square alpha. So, this is the expression which gives you the value of A. In other words, A depends upon what? A would depend upon capital H, number 1, alright, distance of the section at which H is acting. So, D and the alpha value. Coming back to your partial answer, what is the peculiarity of this equation which is linked with the question which you are asking? At this plane the Q is Q, at this plane also Q is Q, at this plane also Q is Q, agreed? Continuity. What do you observe here? That the outcrop point is independent of Q. Is this okay? So, one of the questions has been answered. It does not matter where I put the tail and the outcrop point, clear, because the location of the outcrop point is only the geometry of the downstream side of the earthen embankment. Is okay? Second question I will answer in the due course of time. Is this okay now? So, what we have shown is A point, and now please sit down and try to solve this and prove that A what you get from here is same as the A what you are getting from here. So, these are the two ways to solve the location of the outcrop point. So, this is the analytical solution. Fine, but I am sure you must have realized the derivations are very informative. They give you a lot of information about how to design the cross sections of the dams, homogeneous cross section of the dam. This is the upstream side of the water of height h, okay. This is the equipotential line, and this side is also an equipotential line from the end point to the point where I have taken y equal to h, alright. That is how I think I created boundary conditions, yeah. So, from this point this is A cos alpha, and then I am substituting the value of A as this thing A sin alpha y. truly speaking, if this is an equipotential line, the top phreatic line should have been perpendicular to this. But what we have proven until now is that the top phreatic line is a parabolic curve. Alright. How to fit the parabola on this? Now, please stop writing and see what I am doing. This will give you better understanding of what we are going to discuss subsequently. The only possibility to fix a parabola on this figure or superimpose on this figure would be if the parabola goes like this. Is this correct? Agreed? Because what we did is we have shown, we have derived the expression. Now, if you put this equation and superimpose on this cross section, this is how the situation would be. Now, tell me, what are the geometrical irregularities I have induced in the process? Let us start counting. Is this possible? Very good. Why not possible? You are right, answer is correct. It is not possible. Why it is not possible? Look at the flow line and the equipotential line, they are not perpendicular to each other. Number one, fallacy, or I would say this is violating del square phi equal to 0 and del square psi equal to 0 case. It is not, because the way you will plot it, you will normally know that it is going to cut, so you can differentiate that parabolic function over here, you will find it is not, alright. The second, what is the second loophole? Look at the figure, start is included in that. Yeah, you are right. So, this is the number one discrepancy, number two discrepancy is this, number three. Yeah, that has come already. So, perpendicular to the, very good, that also. No, downstream will come later, first you finish this part. What next? Come out of that discussion, that I have now said that there is some problem over here. Now, what is the other problem, major problem? What I have drawn here is a top flow line. Is there some problem with that? Look at where the top flow or the phreatic line is going. It should have been in the porous media. Imagine you are drawing a top flow line which is going outside the porous media. That means this is also, there is a problem. Agreed? So, what should be done? Create the correct phreatic line in the dam body, and that answers your question. Is this part okay? See, even then what is going to happen? I am sure even if you shift it, whatever you do, there is going to be a discrepancy like this. Try this now. Clear? And there is an answer for that. So, let us assume this situation. Now, the question is, how are you going to come out of this situation? What we have to do is, we have to reshape the equation of parabola which we have derived. So, let us start applying corrections from point number 1. Is this part okay? The discrepancy part, have you understood what we should be doing? As you rightly said, the flow line is going to be perpendicular to the equipotential and not starting from this point where the water is matching with the body of the dam. It will be at a certain distance x. So, the top phreatic line would start like this Okay. Now this is near perpendicular. Then what will happen? This will go further down. At this point, where is the outcrop point now? Outcrop point should have been somewhere here. So I have to match it with this outcrop point, which we have obtained as A. The distance between this point and the point where the parabola is cutting is the error delta A. We have added two more uncertainties now in the process of solving the situation. What are these two unknowns? One is x, another one is delta A. X we can sort out by assuming that if the length of the submergence of the upstream slope is L, length of the submergence of the upstream slope is L, x is going to be equal to 0.3 times L. This I have taken care of. That means the initiation of the flow line is going to be from a distance of 0.3 times L if L happens to be the submergence length of the slope in the x axis. Number 2, this line itself is an equipotential line. So the way I have drawn is still wrong. What should have been done? Yes, you are right. It will be perpendicular, comes like this, cuts perpendicular and goes like this. Okay. The another uncertainty is empirical in nature, delta A. So what people have done is they have come out with design charts. And in design charts, if beta is known, where beta is the downstream slope angle, if this is 30 degree, 60 degree, 90 degree, 120 degree, is it possible? 120 degree? It is possible. We will discuss such cases. 150 degree, 180 degree. The value of delta A upon A plus delta A is 0.36, 0.32, 0.26, 0.18, 0.10 and 0. This was given by Arthur Casagrande. We call this as Casagrande graph, where delta A upon A plus delta A is inversely proportional to the beta. Delta A is the error term. Truly speaking, what you are doing, you are pushing this whole thing inside, clear? So this can be pushed only when this point is a fictitious point and it goes inside, so that the graph matches with the outcrop point. That is it, it is a fictitious point. So this we have taken care of, alright. So normally these type of situations are drawn graphically. First you apply correction over here, number 2 correction over here, come up to a certain point over here, let the graph be discontinuous, start from the downstream side, fix value of A, obtain the value of delta A plus delta A is known, fit this portion of the graph again and then let it be discontinuous up to point B, and in between you can match the two graphs. Nowadays you have FEM packages which can do these things for you quite easily, but I thought it is important to discuss in the class the conventional way of doing the things.